Personal branding, my understanding, is a number of definitions as we know, but personal branding is not being popular on social media. Personal brand is when people have an aligned sense of what you're about and what you're there for, and they feel a certain way about you, and everywhere they see you and everywhere they go, it feels aligned and consistent. And the people who get that right, who know what they're doing, the proper personal brand specialists, who I know plenty, I'm very fortunate to, they're the ones who really go deep on the science and the theory behind it, rather than I can 10x your profile and I can make you popular. And that is smoke and mirrors to cover up the fact that very little else might happen.
No Bullshit Talks is a podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. There's too much bullshit out there, especially when it comes to business. This podcast aims to highlight what's true and what's not in the world of entrepreneurship, bringing you honest and raw conversations about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship. Each week, my guest will be a high-performing entrepreneur sharing the ups and downs of their journey and helping you prepare for the road ahead, while providing you with actionable insights and absolute gems of knowledge. Stay tuned as I introduce this week's guest. Richard Moore is the founder of the LinkedIn Client Accelerator and has been helping consultants and coaches win more clients on LinkedIn for the last decade. He's known to be one of the world's experts on selling on LinkedIn and has built the #1 sales training community to help people sell with excellence. He's helped clients land contracts with big brands such as Coca-Cola, Louis Vuitton and Amazon. I present to you this week's guest, Richard Moore.
Welcome, Richard, to No Bullshit Talks.
Thank you very much. It's so exciting to be here.
I'm so excited to
I'm
be here.
pumped. We've got combined a lot of energy, I think.
I think so. It could be quite a high-powered podcast.
Yeah.
So I want you to explain what you do in your words before I talk about it, because I feel like I'm going to butcher it.
Right now, the thing I do is I mostly help people to convert. So actually make money, like get customers to pay their bank account for the services they offer. And that typically is with an attraction-based approach. My vehicle is LinkedIn, and so content is the thing there. But I'm very, very big on helping the little guy who doesn't have massive influence and a huge following, who can't miss if they do anything. I'm looking at competence in conversion rather than volume to kind of offset that, and whatever happens, I end up with a deal somehow without trying. So I love teaching people how to understand the nuance of communication and nurture like a fragile moment that might turn into a sale, because everyone can do it without becoming irritating or a salesperson.
Yeah.
That's crucial.
I learned that the first word you said was convert. You didn't say, I do LinkedIn training, I do content marketing. You didn't say any of that fluffy stuff. You literally said, I help people convert and get paid. Because at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants. Like, we're not all in business for fun. And like, don't get me wrong, I talk so much about how I want people to enjoy it and have fun along the way. But if it ain't going to pay the bills, it's not going to be very helpful.
And I think we'll both agree that the current narrative is that, for instance, personal brand or being popular or having lots of attention or having a strong presence online is the end game, because that's what is being pushed. But it's not. It's the beginning, really, of your funnel. And then you have to nurture and convert. And ultimately, you're either deluded or you recognize you're there. LinkedIn, for instance, you're there to convert. You are there for customer acquisition. Otherwise, what the hell are we doing? It's just mucking around trying to compensate for something. No one is there just to give value. Ultimately, they should be there for a goal to help their business. And I feel very strongly about that because I'm right.
Yeah. I love that because I'm
True.
right.
It's true. And that's the end of the podcast. It's all I needed to say.
I'm just right. That's it. But you know what's so funny? Like you said, no one's there to give value. But yet 90% of the content on LinkedIn at the moment is like, you must give value. That's what it is. And it's so funny because I had like a call with someone the other day, which basically turned into a free consultation because she clearly had no intention of paying me. But she wanted to pick my brains on LinkedIn content. She was like, you seem to, do sort of right on LinkedIn to kind of pick your brains. So I was like, sure. And then I was like, and she was saying that she was creating lots of content, wasn't doing that well. So I was like, what is the sole reason? What is the reason you want to create content? So I asked her that question. She was like, to give value. And I was like, okay, is it to give value? Or then I think, well, then if it is, then you're already doing it because you're making a lot of great content. So why should she's like, no, but like I want to give value, but then like I want a bit more. I was like, do you want to make money? Is that what you're saying? She was like, no, I don't. And I was like, do you know what? It's fine to just say, I want to make money. Yeah. And she found it such a thing. And she's like, okay, fine, I want to make money. I was like, well, now we're at the real stuff. We're having that real conversation.
No one wants to admit it.
Exactly, but why is it so bad?
People think it's crass.
What's crass is people bragging about how much money they're earning on LinkedIn when they don't even earn that. Yes. But why is it crass to just say, I'm looking to earn a living? Absolutely,
because what we've got is a very skewed view of what matters. And the problem is that humans as an animal, human animals are hardwired to revere status. We just are. And so what happens is if we see someone with what we believe is status, then we think that is right. So we try to map our actions to what they're doing. The issue is big numbers are good numbers is the current narrative. Yeah. And the fact is getting followers or impressions or engagement is easy relative to learning the nuance of communication with people. Again, I'm right. And so what's crucial about that is to understand that it's harder to be effective and sell correctly, but it's easier to get people to engineer a perception of popularity, which makes people think, because perception is reality, especially online, people assume that you're successful because you're popular. Therefore, you can feel good about the thing you're missing. And I know this is pointing the finger at people, but we need to recognize that is a slow death. And that is it sounds negative, but it is ultimately a route to misery. And this is over a decade of doing this online, speaking, and 7 years on LinkedIn. I've seen it all from the beginning, really, of content marketing on LinkedIn, and seen it all. And it's misery. And you get people who are appearing popular, but not having any money. And that they're grinding 18-hour days to appear popular, on the assumption that will feed them in the end. So what needs to happen is we're clear with ourselves that there's no harm or problem in being popular or having attention or building an audience that's into us. But what are you going to do with it for good? Look after yourself, cool. Make your agency or business some clients, cool. Or give to others, brilliant. But value for the sake of value isn't worth it, because conversion, which needs to be defined by the self, can take many forms. It could be like, do you know what? I want to convert people to listen to this podcast because I feel I've got something to give. Or I want to convert people to follow our charity to make that more present. Or I want to convert people to make more money. But you're right. I think there's this sense of nobility, isn't there, in saying, oh, well, I don't do that because that's just a bit crass. But ultimately, we are lying to ourselves unless it's a non-profit. And even then, you're still trying to convert in some way. Giving value is just a nice way of saving face and appeasing a narrative that's in here, as opposed to what we really should be doing. It's really crucial.
Yeah, and actually it's funny because I've done the opposite, and I've been very much telling everyone recently that I need to make more of a salesy turn on my LinkedIn, because I think that I don't think I used it to create value. I might have accidentally used it to create value. I was more using it as an outlet for ranting. That was what you probably can tell.
No, I think it's really interesting because, again, what we've got there is the idea of ranting for some is negative, but actually you're coming up with an opinion. And in the world of, let's call it of fluff in content, it's only an increasing echo chamber of say agreeable stuff.
Yeah.
Even if you look at AI is programmed, the AI commenters, it's programmed to be agreeable. Just say agreeable stuff. The ranters are the ones we need, because the ranters, another way to define that is someone who has an opinion and who is strident in delivering it. And what happens is with ranters is it polarizes. And if you've got the boldness to actually say, actually, I genuinely believe in this thing, say things like, I'm right. Although tongue in cheek, I am. The fact is, what happens is you get some people go, well, I don't agree. And so hopefully have some good dialogue. Or you have people go, yeah, thank you. Finally, someone said it. And that's really what we should be doing. Yeah. It's all about discourse rather than just agreeing. Otherwise, why don't we just let AI do it all?
That's what I think. I don't understand why this content is ever seen as valuable, because it's the same stuff over and over again. It's like, then you might as well just be learning off an AI. There's no human connection or conversation there to have. And I think debates are healthy. Like I say, for me, I keep doing it because it's like having a blog. For me, that's my blog, right? So I just
your outlet.
Exactly, that's my outlet. So I've not thought about sales, but it happened accidentally. But I do it for the fact that every single post I do, someone drops into my DMs and say, thank you so much for saying the things I really wanted to say. And then it became a bit of pressure because I felt like I was the person that was supposed to say things that other people couldn't say. And then it was like hard because I felt like I had
That's an amazing brand to have, yeah.
It's hard though, because it is like people say that some people would come up to me at events and be like, oh, you're the one who says all the things that we think, but we're too scared to say. And I'm like, damn, that's a lot, like, and then they were like, and I was like, well, I suppose I do, but I just say how I feel because I'm like, I'm entitled to an opinion. I never do it offensively. There's a difference. I'm not like pointing names, and I think that's a bit harsh. I don't say you're full of shit, you're full of shit. I'm just like, here's what I don't like, here's why I don't like it, and here's the science to back it up most of the time. And that's kind of what I do, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, but I think what's interesting, you've touched on this really well, I think, because it's being agreeable and just giving value in the, oh my goodness, that's so obvious, common sense kind of way, is the such a low barrier to entry. And that's what certainly new beginners do. They're like, well, look, the majority are doing this stuff, so I'll just do the same. Because if I participate, I'll fit in. This is all that's going on, is I'll fit in and I'll get some of what they've got, which is the most prominent ones who are in my feed have 4 or 20 or 60,000 followers. Cool, I'll like some of that, because if I have followers, I'm sure everything will just work out. So I'll emulate what I'm seeing. And we've moved so far from having intelligent discussion or suggesting there's another way or an evolution or a revision on a mainstream idea, that you end up with people like you being incredibly unique. And with all love, the fact is that all humans probably have an opinion if they gave it a moment's thought. But it's becoming a unique thing because people don't want to rock the boat, because they'd rather sit in the middle than be an outlier. And I think that's always been a human thing. But what we're seeing is very, very magnified on social media. And what happens, if people want to know the real timeline, is you start, you don't know what to do. So you go, well, what's the prevailing approach? Well, I'll just give value like everyone else. Then after a while, when you get bored, as does the audience of continually posting Maya Angelou quotes, you end up a bit further down the line going, maybe I should be a bit more cutting edge, or at least believe something and say it. And then we start moving, as long as we haven't quit, we start moving to a place where we actually have something to say. And people who pop out of that part are the ones who can start to win. I think there's a difference between having an audience and attracting the right people, specifically in the right way. That's massive.
I love that. And I think that one of the comments I've had the most when people talk about my content is they're like, I'm not as controversial as you. I can't be as controversial as you. And I was like, I'm not trying to be controversial. I'm not actually actively thinking what's controversial that I can say. But it's just that every day when you're consuming content, and I'm like, oh my God, and I just get pissed off with stuff when I'm scrolling through. I'm like, that's full of shit. That's full of shit. And then I'm like, I'm just going to say my opinion on it. And that's all it is. It's just like every time I have an opinion on something, I just put it to paper. So then someone will leave me a voice note and they'll be like, oh, I totally agree with this, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that's a post. Yes. Why don't you just say that? And they're like, oh, no, I can't say that. And then there's that fear.
But here we have the other extreme. This is the problem is of, well, what would get me uber results, like loads and loads of engagement? Well, what do those people do? Well, they're really polarizing. And so what we start getting is people feigning sensationalist posts and getting really, really hooky. But like, I'm not particularly polarizing or anything like that. But one thing I've always done is say like, well, what do I believe? And as an interesting, useful kind of point of knowledge for my audience, how could I say it in a particular way? And usually the form of my post is, you probably think this thing and it has some weight. However, have you considered this blind spot as well? Just an evolution on what the mainstream held belief is. I think that goes a long way. And when I started, like if I go back to 2014, when I was on Facebook, do you remember Facebook?
Oh, yeah.
So when I was on Facebook, I would go to Google and I'd type sales tips, and it'd come like 10 sales tips, and I'd read them and I'd be like, no, and then I'd write my own version. Or, I mean, it would literally be, I just read a bunch of sales tips. Here's what I think they're missing, and just like dare to bother to do a bit of reading or research, and then have that dialogue with yourself. What do you think? Do you have an opinion? Because actually, followers typically follow you because they want to hear your opinion on something. It's crucial.
That's exactly what I think. So that's where I think the value from humans come in. Otherwise, you are just a monkey operating the AI. And this is what people don't understand. And they say use AI before it replaces you. But I was like, you're basically just regurgitating AI.
Yeah.
And so what I've noticed, I don't know what you think about this, but I think that people don't even know how to form an opinion anymore. Like, I've even seen it in real life settings where I'm in a situation and I'm like, oh, what could we do here? And they're like, let me just ask ChatGPT. I was like, wait, are you joking? You're actually going to ask ChatGPT in this scenario and not even try to use your brain to come up with something? I think that's people are so obsessed and have become so reliant on AI that they actually can't form their own opinions. And I see this on talks and panels and they can't answer questions. It's an AI answer.
Well, there's a pre-AI version of that is, what do you think before I answer? And putting something ahead of you thinking for yourself is dangerous, because you absolutely work that muscle instead of your own brain. So what we're talking about here is in order to fight back against this is, how do we actually systematize, not in a really overbearing way, but how do we systematize thinking for ourselves so we don't lose that art of it? The way you do it is, it's step one is, what's the received information? Step two, hidden step two, typically is test it or get elaboration. So for instance, if you tell me something, it's tempting, typically, for the average human. You can tell I'm a bit of a geek in communication. What's interesting is the average human will be like, I want to give you an opinion or a response, at least a response. Like the typical one at the moment is, oh, I agree, that's really lovely. To people please, right? Yeah. But secret step number two is, what do you mean? Or can you elaborate a bit further? So it's a really good tip, and I think anyone should test this in their next conversation. It works literally every time. If someone says something to you, unless it's like, what time is it? If they say something to you,
what do you think? What time is it?
No, what do you mean by what time it is? What even is time? Like, it's not ideal, is it? If someone stops you in the street. But my point is, if someone says something, then say like, what do you mean by that? Or can you elaborate a bit further? Or words to the effect of, can you give me a bit more, please? Because now we get more information. Step three is, well, what do you think on that? And you are allowed to pause for a minute and think, what is my opinion? And your opinion isn't wrong because it's an opinion. Yeah. The things that are wrong are things that are not facts.
But you state them as facts.
Correct. Yeah. So there are facts and there are opinions, and you're allowed to have an opinion. But facts are facts, and so that's crucial to be aware of. So your next step is like, well, what is my opinion? And if you're struggling with paralysis or making an opinion, then a really important thing to consider is, what's your feeling to the information you received? And you can comment, and that's how you can form an opinion. It's rather than trying to sound intelligent, you say to yourself, how do I feel? And it's physiological. How do I feel about the information I've received? And that will help you form something. It sounds crazy that we're discussing how to have an opinion, but like, people should go try it. And I think although I've made it seem like a flow chart's required, the truth is, it's actually very innate.
It should be.
It should, but it is being lost.
Exactly.
But it's innate enough that if we give it a try, but it will feel fairly natural. But if I may, I think it's really important to add that one should develop a level of, disgust is too much, but disdain for themselves if their default reaction is must check ChatGPT. Your reaction should be, what the hell am I doing? Aren't I educated? Aren't I intelligent? Because I bet you tell everyone else you are, right? So I bet you like, well, I hold myself in high regard, so show it. Do you really need the AI? That's not to diminish the value of AI, because that's your final step.
Mm-hmm.
Should you need it, you can collaboratively say, I wonder what the internet says, rather than what does the internet say. And I must say, pre-AI, the response often was, do you know the answer to this? And it's like, but you can just work that out, or like it's obvious, or like, what did Google say when you checked? It's like, well, my impulsive reaction was just to ask someone else.
Yeah.
So let's not lose the art of thinking for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be hard at all. And I think that therein is how we can write great posts. Just stop and actually, like, how do I feel about this? You know.
So I have to ask, what is the difference then between, I feel like I'm going to offend you here, between what you do and personal branding? I'm not saying there is no difference, but I'm deliberately asking you so you can clarify for everyone else.
I'm glad you're being clear. Otherwise, you're like, how dare you moment.
But that's why, because I feel like everyone out there now, there's suddenly like a new LinkedIn trainer every week on LinkedIn, and it's just nuts. And I just don't really understand it. Why people
we've hit peak LinkedIn trainer for sure this year.
Honestly, it's a joke. And so personal branding is all the rage, and everyone seems to be a personal branding expert. I don't quite know how, but you know, you are an expert in LinkedIn, but you don't call yourself a personal branding expert. This is not what you do. And like you said, conversion is your priority. Can you please walk through what you do and how it's very different to personal branding?
Yeah. And I'm going to put a big disclaimer in at the start. Personal branding done right is utterly critical to your big next level of success. It's absolutely crucial. And done correctly. The two major rockets behind my business were shifting from Facebook to LinkedIn and starting to put money behind people who know what they're doing to help me build my brand up properly, rather than like, maybe I'll quote Henry Ford today. I don't know. And so like doing it a bit better. So personal branding, my understanding, there's a number of definitions as we know, but personal branding is not being popular on social media. Personal brand is when people have an aligned sense of what you're about and what you're there for, and they feel a certain way about you, and everywhere they see you and everywhere they go, it feels aligned and consistent. And the people who get that right, who know what they're doing, the proper personal brand specialists, who I know plenty, I'm very fortunate to, they're the ones who really go deep on the science and the theory behind it, rather than I can 10x your profile and I can make you popular. And that is smoke and mirrors to cover up the fact that very little else might happen. And of course, when someone then does get a customer, it's confirmation bias that it all works.
Yes, exactly.
So like there's crucial definition there. So I happen to have some measure of a personal brand behind what I do, because I am disciplined enough to stay in lane and every day talk about the thing I do. And if I talk about adjacent topics, I map them to what I do. So everyone knows that whenever so if they've seen my content enough, everyone has a sense of what I'm there for and what I want to talk about. And my flavor is always related to conversion. And it's not that's rubbish or no good, but I will call out any kind of suggestions that you just need more followers or you just need more audience or engagement. So specifically what I do is help people understand that deals, so real conversion, proper deals and acquisition of a customer, comes ultimately down to one person and you, an interaction between two people. It might be online, it might be on a call, it might be in person. Ultimately, from many, it has to come down to that one person. Even if you're speaking to a customer with multiple stakeholders, one person ultimately is going to sign off. And that interaction between you and them is multifaceted and needs to be understood. And what's interesting, going back to the top of this session, what's interesting is that there's a view that of those who maybe aren't as au fait with the kind of the detail in a nuance in business, is that they feel it's either value for the masses or being salesy. But there's a spectrum. And what you've got there is two far extremes of a spectrum. And so I'm trying to articulate this right. You've got at one end, if I'm going to be super popular and influential and a big, big personal brand and so on, I don't have to do anything. People just buy stuff, which is a thing. It can work, but you have to hold your breath for years whilst you grind to get everyone to love you. The other end is No personal brand. This is what I used to do when I was in my early 20s in the city. You just dial and call and impose and sell at people.
Yeah.
And my job was to do 100 dials a day. Yeah. I wasn't doing literally anything else, not even account management of the companies I'd sold. 100 dials a day. And if I did all right, I would pop out at the end of the week with one deal.
1%?
No, less than one.
Of the week?
So 0.2%.
0.14% or whatever it is, yeah.
0.2% because I was doing $500 a week, and I would probably get 10 to 15 actual demos of our product, which was I was selling internet marketing in 2003, and I would get a deal. And we're talking $2,000. My first deal was €1,700 for a year, Sabrina, of internet marketing. Because back then people were like, oh, come on, the internet, you're kidding. We just had the .com bubble burst. We'll stick with paid advertising in newspapers and things like that. So it's a long time ago. But what's interesting is that is a far extreme. People don't want that. Cold outreach does not work. You can't, and let me be clear on that. It does not work as a way to make sure you can get deals every single day. You can grind, and you might win some people who happen to be in the market for it, but it's not a strategy really that is fulfilling for either party. They didn't want you didn't want to do it. You happen to overturn something that was ending up as a purchase, but it's a bit like buying lottery tickets and you happen to win every so often. Now, in the middle is something of the two. And for the last 10 years running my own business, I've really enjoyed the attraction gained through content, but I'm never focused on virality or follower count. I'm focusing on always one crucial thing. Am I saying the right thing to the right people? Now, if I was selling how to be popular and how to be a LinkedIn guru, well, then I would be going for leverage in the form of loads of followers and loads of engagement. But I don't need that. I need, again, one person ultimately to be like, hey, that could be really useful. Or, hey, I like the opinion you wrote today. And then that's my start point. So I'm really helping people to firstly understand that sure, volume can help, but there comes a time when, and daily it should be, where you choose to interact with individuals. Because when you interact with individuals, I hate the term picking them from the herd. Because it's like a lion taking a wildebeest. But it really is like when they're all listening, but like you ultimately have to speak to individuals. And when you have deep conversations with a very low volume of people, this is for high ticket selling, very low volume of people each day, rather than just trying to speak to millions, what happens is you get depth. And when you get depth, you get trust. And when you get trust, you get a propensity towards possibly hearing you out and maybe wanting to buy from you. And sales, no one likes to sell, but they bloody love it when someone wants to buy. Yeah. Suddenly sales are the best thing ever. And I find it laughable when people say, oh, I don't sell, Richard, because people just come to me. And it's like, well, you do sell because there's a point when you have to take the order. And ideally, this is this fusion of marketing and sales, isn't it? And brand and marketing and all that kind of world. Because if you get it right, all that heavy lifting of positioning and the optics around seeing you in the right way, and essentially this internal emotional belief that you're their hero that can fix the problem, gets done before the point when you're kind of interacting. So in short, when they're kind of in love with you a bit, that's the bit where you're like, so this is what people say, like, how do I not mess that bit up? And that is critical, that moment. So I'm so fortunate that in my past, I learned how to do bread and butter sales, €1,700 deals, all the way up to like 6-figure deals and like what that feels like, and in person and that kind of thing. I really cut my teeth in just volume of selling over a decade. And it was wonderful to do that. And it's interesting, all of those experiences have really helped me, I feel, understand what it feels like to be in the buyer chair. And I think what matters is that we, if we're trying to transact, need to understand that how we want to sell, which is, hey, could you buy my thing, please? And everyone's like, oh my God, of course, isn't going to happen. What we need to do instead is meet them where they are. And the state of a buyer, potentially, a potential buyer, when they look at your content is typically, that's kind of cool. Okay, who is that person? And then they're gone. Yeah. So how do we nurture that cool passive audience member. And it's like, people really like this because I think they like the fact that obviously the outcome is deals and people like money. I don't know why, it's weird.
Yeah.
But prior to that, they really like the depth and nuance around how people interact. And it's like, and learning about, what I love the most actually is when, aside from people making money, because they love that a lot. But what I love the most is when people say things like, I didn't realize that about how I was interacting. I didn't realize if I said it in that way, that it would have that effect, you know? And those minor blind spots can make massive changes. One of my favorite times a few years ago was a chap I worked with. And I remember he said, I just love that now I don't scare people off when someone looks at my profile. Because most people genuinely, and I mean it, most people I speak to are paralyzed to the point that they don't bother to interact because there's this fear of like, well, I'm going to piss them off or I'm going to say something wrong. So they don't even try it. Meanwhile, their business is tanking completely. And we have to try, but if you can just bring a bit of elegance, you tend to find that people are quite happy to speak to you. The key, of course, and this is ultimately the point I'm trying to make, is to not be salesy. The key is to run everything through a filter first of, if someone said it to me, or an even better one is, if I said it to someone literally face to face, would I cringe or feel the ick?
Yeah.
If so, don't do
Then
it.
yeah. I think that's everyone's fear, isn't it? To feel cringe, and they keep saying that. I think what I've noticed though is the difference is that like there's obviously different things that people are selling. And I think that the popularity thing and posting the Henry Ford post and posting all the generic niceties that kind of do well and look really popular, they only work if you're then selling a course or something, because the people are just selling this course and then they still don't need to interact with anyone. And essentially you don't actually have any face-to-face contact. So there are people out there who are setting up a business like that because essentially they don't have anything real to give. So they have AI churning out their content, then they have AI creating their videos for them. They've got a video avatar of themselves, which is wild. So they've just got AI doing that for them. And then they're all just direct into a course that's pre-recorded of a script that's been written by AI or someone else. And
to perpetuate, to sell how to do exactly what they've done.
Exactly. And so so actually there's not really any value given because they're not actually doing anything. They're just taking AI and putting it into the form of like themselves. Yeah. And so they don't need to sell anything because they've got actually nothing to give. So the problem is, I think there's so much content geared around that kind of selling, and it just doesn't work if you're in the process of selling like a real service, a real like consulting, or like, you know, you're an agency, like you said, or doing that kind of thing. I just don't think the same method works.
Let's get tactical, because the fact is, if I'm a LinkedIn guru selling how to be a LinkedIn guru to LinkedIn gurus, then fine. Because as long as I'm the biggest, most popular LinkedIn guru, everyone will buy how to be a LinkedIn guru. But and that's fine, but ultimately it's diminishing returns down the line.
It's bad, but I'm laughing because that actually does happen. And it's the most stupid thing ever.
It is. But it's an economy that allows people to not have to go get a job. Yeah. Because they can do it and make $4,000 a month. Yeah. And they don't think about the fact it's less than minimum wage if they work out the number of hours worked. I remember telling someone once, you know, you could stack shelves in the supermarket and you would be paid more. And like, don't tell me that. But the truth is, like, even if they are making less than minimum wage, they can choose, inverted commas, to not be answerable to someone else. And so there is something in that. And actually it might, and I'm trying to be nice now, it might be that is a great way to help yourself have the space to learn discipline and other things. And what you find is those that aren't full of shit, who actually genuinely do get LinkedIn and are selling how to do it right, when they sell those kind of things, if they do it enough, they do pop out the end after a while and say to themselves, this is a bit, not vacuous, but like, am I getting enough impact? What do I really want? And if they're making a bit of money, they're like, actually, why don't I do something with a bit more depth? And then you start getting some value from them. So there is that. But you're absolutely right, because the majority of people aren't LinkedIn gurus wanting to be LinkedIn gurus. What the majority are people who are like, I don't have time. I don't want to muck around online, and I am really good at this thing over here. And the problem is that they think that emulating the results of their LinkedIn guru will get them similar results. Emulating the actions of LinkedIn guru will get them similar results in the sense that they'll have loads of followers, be a big thought leader and have loads of attention, and life will be very easy. But the truth is, if I'm selling a cybersecurity IT business and I'm the CEO of that, I may have to suck up the fact that I'm not going to be as popular, which is where we need to be tactical. It's like, so what do we need to do? And again, it's back to this point of, are we saying the right things to the right people? Where it all starts, though, isn't content. It starts at adding daily right people into your network. Because by virtue of the fact that gurus and peers and friends and allies engaging with our post will distribute it more, it will unlock distribution of our post to people in our own network. So what that looks like is every day I add people who are either potential buyers or in that person's kind of ecosystem.
So do you actually add people every single day?
I do exactly that.
Wow.
And not millions.
Okay.
I might add 4.
Okay.
But 4 a day across a month is 120 curated additions. I basically turn down everyone who's connection request unless they're like, I think that might be someone who's got some measure of effort going towards LinkedIn, because that's what we're going to be using. They clearly have a bit of experience. My kind of sweet spot is someone who's got a bit of talent, maybe being ex-corporate, running their own thing, but clearly just not doing well enough. And it's sad, but like I tend to help the frustrated people who are fed up of the LinkedIn gurus teaching them how to get in pods or do really well in the form of more views, and they just want to make some money. So adding a few people every day is job number 1, because what we're doing then is saying, if my post was to get some traction, then LinkedIn will send it to some portion of those I'm connected to, which includes these right people. So you need to coach or like train LinkedIn, like it's this region and it's this kind of job and this kind of industry. It's those people I keep adding. And then the next thing is like, now, am I speaking to them in the right way? And here is the biggest blind spot of the creators. It's that they assume that the buyer or prospect is solution aware or even problem aware. Now, there's a famous thing that everyone's adopted when they read one book on sales, which is it's like a matrix. It's either prospects are unaware, unaware, problem aware, or solution aware. They have no idea, or they know that there's a problem, they know their problem, or they know what the solution is and they're the best because they just want to shop and buy. Now, what's missing is that between the first and the second one is the bloated majority of people you'll encounter. And it's not defined and it's completely overlooked. When I talk about problems, the issue is that the buyers, a managing director of a 6 million quid company that sells whatever, bricks and mortar company, for instance, that person isn't thinking about the problem. But what they are doing is experiencing the symptoms of the problem.
Right.
So here's how a nice way to explain it. And I've said it a million times online, but a really good way to put it is, if I've got a cough and a wheezy chest, I don't know that I've got bronchitis, the problem, but I know the symptoms, cough and a wheezy chest. A doctor, an expert, so someone like who can help me, would know not just my symptoms, would also know the problem, but also would know the solution. So what we want to do is meet the buyers where they are. So we're adding them top or funnel each day, adding them in, and then our content, rather than if I write the word 10x, maybe I'll get more views. It's like, what's the inner dialogue that a potential buyer has? And it's not even in a dialogue, sometimes it's a feeling that represents symptoms of a problem. So if you can get in their heads, and all it is a 10-minute in the quiet, thinking to yourself kind of experiment, what the kind of feelings someone has, what are the frustrations, what are the things that make them feel fed up. Because what we're mapping to is a reaction or a response to your post of, I feel seen, or like, yes, that's exactly how I would put it. Yeah. Or like, oh my God, you're in my head. That's so how I think it is. You can't talk about a problem when someone is not considering a problem. A managing director who needs ultimately a solution of a better personal brand has no idea that they need a better personal brand. They don't even realize that the problem that they've got maps to a personal brand being improved as the solution, but they're experiencing every day that everyone's very, when when it comes to looking at their product, even people look at them, and even people like have talks with their sales guys. And the issue is they're like, well, think about it. And no one's really buying. But they don't know that impressive personal brand will make a difference, because managing directors of businesses that do things other than personal branding or LinkedIn gurus aren't thinking about personal brand. A managing director is not thinking, do you know what? If we had better UX on our website, that would fix everything. That's problem and solution aware. And we're just hoping that this minute segment of the whole spectrum is paying attention, and they're not. So when we map more to the majority of people and you say it in the way that they see it, it just makes them lock into you more. So let me just give a quick example. I remember years ago, this is when it confirmed it for me. This was probably 5 years ago or so on LinkedIn. I remember writing what someone said to me on a call. She said, Richard, all my friends think I'm crushing it on LinkedIn, but I'm stone cold broke. And I put it, and this is literally when you're showing that you get them and you understand the symptoms they're experiencing, you should be putting it in quotation. So I did that. And I've done it many times since. Like, you're thinking this, and basically like, you know how you feel this way. You know how you have that feeling? I know what it is. So imagine a doctor saying, like, you're like, doctor, I've got this cough and I've got wheezy chest, and it's like, and you're sweating. I bet you're sweating as well. Yes, I am. And have you got brain fog too? Oh my God. So he or she is aware of your symptoms. We're not ready for problems or solutions yet, but that's how we hook in. And we suddenly, can you see, you can feel it almost. I only need 3 of those a day. Like, I don't even need that. I need 3 people who might be like, I'm interested in speaking at least, or welcoming it if I reach out to them because they looked at me. But imagine if I end up with 3 or 4 calls in a week, not 30 leads a day from the gurus for lead gen, 4 a week with people who are like, you're so right. And you're like, there's a couple of things you could do, by the way. And now I've got a call. And it's about low volume, but high quality interaction that starts meeting them where they are. The final thing I'll add on this is, as one becomes more of an expert with their space, it's really tempting to articulate things in really beautiful ways that summarizes it all perfectly. But actually I found, I don't like the word hack, but let's call it a hack. A really good hack is when you're writing your posts, use the wording that they would use. And the way I've described it before is like the stumbling, clunky wording they would use. So that's a long quote I used. All my friends think I'm crushing it on LinkedIn, but I'm stone cold broke, Richard. But that's how she phrased it. So when you phrase the observation of symptoms in the way they would describe it, rather than your perfect, elegant articulation of it, suddenly they're like, yes, finally, yes, it's exactly how I feel. And I tend to find I get a lot of people nodding and going, oh my God, so true. For instance, when I say, you know how everyone keeps saying you need more followers, or you know how it's all algorithm and engagement. Sure, but don't you want to at one point eventually close something? And they're like, oh, thank you, finally.
Yeah.
And I'm just doing that for my thing. And so that's the question everyone can ask themselves is, what are the symptoms that those with a problem you can solve are currently experiencing? Speak to that. And now we're on the inside of their brain, and no one does it. Like, it's funny. I've done personal branding talks. I don't know how I've managed to be on it, and I'm saying this stuff, and they're like, oh my God, this is a complete blind spot, because people go straight to, you've got this problem, haven't you? And they're like, you've got now an audience going, oh, it must not be for me because I'm not aware of having that problem.
I think that's so, oh my God, I love it, because also, again, it highlights where AI falters, because the AI is not going to say the words that the humans are going to say in their pain points. And I think that's the other reason we're having deep conversations with people, because again, you're not going to get those real feelings and answers from those surface level conversations, because most of the time on social media, everyone's going to be banging on about how great they are doing. Like I said, crushing it on LinkedIn. Everyone appears to be crushing it on LinkedIn. And I only realized people weren't crushing on LinkedIn when I was trying to sell my retreat to people. And they were just like, oh my God, I don't have that much money. Like, and I'm like, well, why has no one got any money? I thought you were all smash it on LinkedIn, because apparently you're all earning
a really good sign of this is the people that are most revered, and like the ones who appear to be doing the best are bragging about having a 6-figure business. Which is not impressive, because if you are trying to target someone who has money, like they get paid $6,000 and you're talking about the turnover being six figures. It only impresses people who are broke.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't impress people who are going to give you $8,000 a month.
Yeah.
So that's a massive, massive, big flag. If someone's bragging about having a six-figure business, they're showing off about their whole company managing to get over the line to six figures. Well done, because probably a solopreneur has made some money.
Yeah.
But what really are we impressed by? That's crucial.
That's exactly what I said a while ago, because I was like, people going, oh yeah, let's help you get to six figures. That's only impressive if you are a solopreneur. If you're running an actual company, like I'm from agency world, six figures means you're not doing very well, because everyone has a 7-figure agency, really, if you think about the turnover.
Yeah.
Profits are different matter.
They are.
But it's like, but I think that's why it's most of the people talking about it, I think, are targeting coaches. From what I see, it's that sort of coach mentality, because they're solo and they want to get their 10K months, and it's that sort of thing, right? It's the same
easy
thing.
metric that actually relatively, they may not, I don't want to belittle people who are trying really hard right now and not quite cracking it.
Yeah.
But when you do it, you're like, it's really not that hard. You just have to typically get your mindset right. You have to have a product that's clear, and you have to broadcast it in the right way. But you do get to a point where it's like, this isn't that impressive. And yeah, you're right. They're selling to freelancey solopreneurs who are basically someone with some talent in a thing that is relatively better than the average person, who's doing it on their own, who's trying to not have to go and get a job. And again, good for them. And I bloody love that economy, because I think it makes the world go round, and I have all the time in the world for them. But bragging to people who are going to spend loads of money is missing the point completely. And this is one of the big blind spots, because that's a perfect example there of not selling in the right, or rather it's a perfect example of not saying the right things to the right people. Because of what a lot of creators do wrong is that they write content for their peers, not for their buyers. So when I'm in personal branding, trying to get a company that doesn't do personal branding, they sell microphones to buy my services, but I talk about personal branding all the time, what I get is, I describe it as a false positive. I get thousands of people going, yes, oh, so right. You're so right. Personal brand. They write, it's all about personal branding at the end of the day. And it's like, yeah, they're all personal brand gurus doing the same thing. And so we're all agreeing with each other, and it feels like we're getting somewhere. Meanwhile, the person who I'm actually selling to, who runs the microphone company, is like, I don't know what that is. It's nothing to do with me. Yeah. No one gives a shit about personal branding. They give a shit about the outcome that personal branding gets them. Yeah. It would be like a mechanic bragging about air compressors, and loads of mechanics going, oh yeah, I love the air compressors. They really make the world go around. More air compressors. Meanwhile, me, who has a flat tire, going, I don't know anything about air compressors. It's not for me. And so I'm not keen on consuming that content. I'm not in orbit around that influencer or content creator who's a mechanic. And but what's interesting is that if they'd only speak about the outcome of quickly, efficiently fixing my tire, I'd be all over them. Yeah. They happen to have an air compressor, which is their tool to fix my tire, but I couldn't care less. No, exactly. I don't care. I just want a tire that's inflated. And like, I know that people hearing this, because every time I say it, like, it'll be the same. Every time people hear this, they're like, oh, I've been totally speaking to the wrong set of people. But because I get applause for it, I feel like I'm doing it right. But it's that you got to understand what right is. Right is engineered perception of popularity, and people who do what I do saying, yeah, you're right. Or it's people going, do you know what? I saw what you said, Sabrina. Actually, I'd be interested to speak a bit more. Now we got leads, and now we got some sales out of it. So
I'm so glad you talked about like talking to the right audience, because it's quite interesting. I've been in agency world for a long time, like I ran my own agency, and the kind of like advice you're given in agency world is you should mingle with other agency owners. Yeah. And like that's what you're saying. It's about talking to your peers, and everyone just basically writes content for other agency owners, and they attract agency owners. That is networking events with other agency owners. I was like, wait a minute, but I want customers. And sure, I'm going to maybe get some outsourcing or whatever, like a partnerships, as people say. But at the end of the day, I want to be known for what we do. So,
Absolutely.
and I was like, so I don't want to be known in agency world. I want to be known by my customers who are doing good work.
I love that.
So I was like, I'm going to start doing events for customers.
Yeah.
And everyone thought I was mad and thought I was rogue. And I was like, this is so much a better way to do it. Talk directly to your customers, not to your competitors.
So my past in corporate is selling internet advertising, so online advertising and events and stuff, but mostly online advertising to proper corporate businesses. And then of course many times there'd be an agency. So I remember I did a deal with Vodafone in the mid 2000s, and that was through their agency. And what you find is there's a lot of agencies who will get the work and then kick downstream to another agency elements of the work, essentially subcontract some of it, because they're like, okay, we've got this job. We're the hero agency that won the big deal with Microsoft, and we get 200 grand for this campaign this month. But part of it is graphics, and we could outsource it to this company because I'm pals with them and I play golf. So we'll do that. And what you find is there is a lot of agencies selling to agency and being pals with agencies because they want they're like nibbling at the pie. What you've done, I love it. I respect it so much.
Thanks.
Because you're like, but if I just go direct to source, then all that money's mine.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And what I was doing, I love that I went through the process of being an employee for 10 years, because I learned more than I could ever learn in that amount of time on someone else's money. But what the problem with being a salesperson in a business is that you do all that work, you prospect, you find the person, you build a relationship, and then at the end of the deal, the company that you work for is like, well done, here's your little bit of commission, and thanks for all the work. And I was like, that's not good enough, which is one of the contributors to me starting my own thing. But jumping over what is actually relatively much more easy, of like just interacting with networking with other agencies to get a slice of their pie, and just doing it direct is hard, because you have to be not just able to deliver anymore, you have to be the one that they believe in. And doing that's tough in a world where, of course, there's a lot of agencies that are directly working with the ultimate, like the customer, but there is a lot of behemoths that will just steamroll you. So we're right back again at this question of like, well, why would they buy you? And it's like, they buy you because you bothered to go deep in this interaction with them, and they like Sabrina more than someone else. So that's how you get the biggest slice of the pie, but it requires boldness, and that's crucial.
And so how do you then, like, all these people out there now who are consuming all this content about personal branding, because let's face it, so many people out there are just like, I must create content, I must write on LinkedIn every single day, I must do this, I must do that. And they're doing it. And I know there are so many people who are doing it every single day. And let's face it, they all look like they're questioning it on LinkedIn, but are stone cold broke, right? As you got that message. How do people go from that to actually really selling and converting, which is what exactly you said you help with? Yeah. So how do people transition and actually start making money on LinkedIn?
It's hard because you have to basically unprogram yourself. And this is going to be painful. If you're in that zone, it's painful because you have to start to live with FOMO first. And that FOMO takes the form of, I'm now not going to be on LinkedIn for the next hour when otherwise I would be. I know in my head, because of that, like, there's the chimp brain in my head FOMOing, saying, but right now, those people who are like really popular having a conversation, they're all having banter and the threads are long in the comments, and I'm not in there posting my GIF and being popular. But if I could deploy that time instead, speaking to some people who are actually looking at me on LinkedIn, just click on profile, click on who looked at my profile and have a look through. And if no one interested is looking at your profile, content sucks, or your network sucks, or you're not adding the right people, you're not spending time in the right places. So you don't go cold turkey, but what you do is you say, I will now put some of my time into individual one-on-one interactions, because conversations with individuals either A, end up with an amazing new connection who now is thinking fondly of you, and guess whose content they see tomorrow, and they will support that, and maybe 8 months downstream they'll start engaging with you to the point where they're like, do you know what, actually now's the time we'll buy something, which happens all the time. Or you end up on a call and that's potentially a deal. But the moment you realize that you need to get off the merry-go-round and actually start interacting with people, and it's not selling at them, it's And sliding into the DMs sounds cringe as well.
Yeah,
and so people need to understand, exactly. People need to understand it's not that. It's like, here's the agenda you need. It is help without agenda. Genuinely help without agenda. But first, you have to just connect as a human does. Because helping first, so if I don't know you, but you've looked at my profile because you like my posts. If I was to say, Sabrina, thanks for looking at my post. Here's a link to my webinar. I know you'll find it valuable. Then like, or if I ask something stupid, like what kind of challenges have you got in your business? Like, it's none of my business asking you that. We're not there yet. So step one is just like, be reasonable. How are you?
Yeah.
The first thing we said to each other was like, hi. And then like, we like then had a hug and like, oh, it's so nice to see you. Like, be normal is something I said a lot, but that's so crucial just to like, do the thing you'd probably do if you met them for the very first time. Then you can talk about the thing that they did. That you looked at my profile. Did you see anything useful? Asking reasonable questions like that, because it's reasonable, will often be very welcome. Pretty much always, they'll be like, "What? Good question. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I just looked and that was it." But at least we've got a conversation. You kill it dead the moment you start a conversation with value that's not yet earned. And so what we need to do is just get into conversation the way you would chat to someone for the first time. And now we can like spend some time asking essentially what or why based questions. So what made you do that? Or why do you feel that's the case? And it's just so simple. If someone is showing interest not in the form of, oh my God, I think I might need to buy your thing, because that's not going to happen every day. They're showing in the interest in the form of they're into the conversation. They're writing paragraphs. They're giving detail. They're choosing to not do their work and engage with you instead. That's a big display of interest in you. So your next step, this is crucial, this help without agenda step is like, why don't we have a call? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
And then you get on a call and you're like, do you know what, the thing you were saying in the chat, because it's so much better than DMs back and forth.
Exactly.
You know, why we're connecting properly, the thing you said in the DMs is really interesting. There's a couple of things I've found that can really help.
Yeah.
Like, and here they are. And if it all ended there, you've got a great connection. They think highly of you. They might tell other people. Some of them are like, oh my God, can I write you a recommendation? You sometimes have that. But worst case, you're there. And I know it's small quantities, but that is worth way more than 100 of the wrong people just looking at you. But what might happen is they're like, oh man, I had no idea I could do it that way. I didn't even know about that suggestion, Sabrina. At which point you've totally emotionally earned the right to now give them value and say like, well, why aren't we working together? Or like, well, but that's what I do. Like, we can explore how I can help if you'd like.
Yeah. I mean, I love this because do you know it's weird? Like, I get inquiries in every single, I wrote this in the day, I get inquiries in every single day, which is amazing to have this inbound thing. Obviously not everyone's going to be, the right people.
But most of them.
But
I'm sure
most of them. But it's nice, and I get some. Like I was on a call with somebody the other day, and they were like, "You came so highly recommended by my friend X," and I'm thinking, I have no idea who that person is, and I felt really bad. And I was like researching through all my DMs and all my emails, and I was like, I still have no idea who this person is. And half the time this happens, and I'm like, wait, I'm getting really highly recommended by someone I don't even know. So it shows you that you're touching people, like that you've helped in some way or whatever. And then sometimes I've been recommended by people and I'm like, I had a quick DM conversation with someone, or like I met them at an event quickly and they still recommended me highly because I was just helpful. I didn't follow up with anything like crazy or sell to them. And I just think if you're just nice to people, people respect that.
That is so profound. And people who don't realize it, that is so profound, because what it represents is a truth that you don't realize it, or like at least you realize it last, that in the often only hundreds of people who've looked at you, there will be a tiny group of people for whom you are perfect. You are their hero, and you just said it the right way. And that's why we can exist in a sea of people doing the same thing. But the way we say it, it's like, I love how you put it that way. And now we're back at, you choose, you regurgitate and be like everyone else, or you say it your way because you have an opinion, and people are like, yes, thank you. And it's just, it's so crucial. I can't overstate it. It's very profound, that point. It's so crucial that people understand that what they believe is possibly just like things they know, for some person might be the change, like a major change in trajectory for that person. And it might be like earth shattering. And I've had people say things like, I know it sounds crazy now, and now that I think about it, but I never even considered to get in the DMs with people who interacted with me. I'm like, what? But it's obviously like normal for me, but it doesn't mean it's normal for them. And you just got to remember that, and I think this is the beautiful way of putting it, there's someone out there literally right now, even if this audience is listening to this podcast now, there's someone out there literally right now who's actually struggling against a problem you can solve. Like genuinely, if they don't interact with you at some point, then we've got some real misery there. Like they've got problems, they're going to lose sleep over it. And if you dared to give your opinion, that person might see you. And if they see you, it's like you can genuinely change their life. And eventually, if you work with enough customers, you get some who are like, I can't tell you how much, if I hadn't, it's like a sliding doors moment. If I had not met you, I would not be here. And like, it's made such a difference. And it's almost borderline immoral to not share your opinion on something because that's an outcome. And I'm not talking about thousands of them. I'm talking about like just a handful, but that's typically all you need to get you going. Like it's like, if ever there was a manifesto to speak your opinion on something, it's that one there. It's so profound what you're saying. And like, you've just got to remember that there's someone out there who is probably lurking and being very quiet about it, but who's nodding intently because you're saying exactly the right thing to them.
And I think that you've just said so many things there about the numbers, and it goes back to the very first points we're talking about, because in what you've just said, it doesn't have to be many people, but you also mentioned something just a moment ago about how, like, you know, you have a conversation and like 8 months later, that turns into something more. And I think that's the problem. I think that people are so looking for this instant, quick solution that they don't realize that it takes time to build up a relationship and the trust before you give your money away. And I think what people aren't doing is putting themselves in that situation as well. Like you said, that thing with people offering value. I get so many people add me on LinkedIn that immediately go, oh, I did this thing, I thought you'd like it. And I'm like, why do I like it? I don't even know who you are. I don't know what this is to do with. And I just don't need another piece of advice that's unwelcomed right now. That's just the last thing I want.
Because the thing is, the advice, it's never the advice. The advice might be brilliant, but you are not in an emotional state where you want it yet. So you don't, it's weird, but like emotionally our guard is up. We don't want to like it until we want to like it. So until that stage, it's none of our business. So we can't be giving people value. And that's why it's really healthy to have a vibe that is like unentitled. Every day we should be like recalibrating back down to zero. We have to earn every view of that post. We have to really make sure we're clear with ourselves that like we have to really say something that's useful rather than just assume people will just fall in our lap. And that what you've just described there is a perfect example of selling the way we want to sell, which is just like, here's a thing and hoping they'll jump. And you tend to find people are getting really miserable because they're doing that at scale. They're like, look, I've gone through all these courses, I've spoken to these lead gen gurus, whatever, and I'm like, I'm doing 50 DMs a day, Rich. And it's like, how are you getting literally nothing? And it's because they're just they're not doing something that's wrong. It's just wrong in terms of the position in the process. There's nothing wrong with value, but not at the start. You have to earn it, which is about recognizing that before someone is the job title they are a human, and that is someone who is going to want to protect their time and be a little unsure of the unknown. So you have to build some trust, and it's about touch points. So, you know, there's all the hilarious things like it takes 7 touch points to get someone to buy from you. No, it doesn't. It takes however many it takes. Sometimes I've had people like, been following you for like a year, Rich. I'm like, you wouldn't know.
They've never spoken. I've had that all the time, and people come up to me and go, I love all your content on LinkedIn. I was like, you've never interacted once with my posts and stuff like that. So you don't know who you're talking to, and I find that really fascinating. The majority
of deals, if like when you actually get results, you tend to find the majority of deals are lurkers. They're not like, oh my God, I've got to write a comment. Because they're just your friends and peers and supporters, which is great.
Nice. You need them too.
Absolutely, because that helps distribute it to the lurkers.
Exactly.
But that's the way to look at it.
And don't underestimate them.
No,
but
not at all.
I now need to ask you about your community, because you've got a new community, and I feel like you've just said so many amazing things in this podcast, and I love that you're all about selling and actually getting results. So Tell me more about the community and who it's for and how people join.
I'm really pleased you asked. Thank you. So I'm very, very aware that I need to, if I'm going to launch a product, I've got to do it right. So my last flagship product was my LinkedIn Client Accelerator, which is 4 and a bit years ago. So I'm not just chucking new products, or I've got low level ones, but like the next big flagship thing, I was like, it needs to be done right. And it's called The Art of Sell. So it's not LinkedIn, so not because I'm not a guru, but it's not LinkedIn focused. It's not personal brand focused. It's all things selling. And it's funny because people are like, well, is it like LinkedIn saying? No, all things selling. Because I think that selling has a bad reputation and selling needs to be fixed. And so it's about education in the elegance of selling. So you don't have to become what is a classically awful salesperson. You learn the things that will help you so you can stay in your area of genius. Now, the way I've done this is there's two crucial components. One, humility on my part. I can't know everything about all areas of sales. I'd like to think I've done well over 21 years, but I can't know it all. And I think there's much more of an exciting proposition when we get legends in instead. So every single week we have a masterclass. And I remember when I started thinking about this, I was like, well, what do most communities do? Because I can't do that. I need to be better. Otherwise, it's not going to be exciting. Most communities, they have a host or a community leader. That would be me. And then they have all their cute friends from, say, Instagram or LinkedIn, and they're all gurus and heroes. And the fact is that that can be really useful. If I was going to do a LinkedIn community, I get loads of legends of LinkedIn on it. But this is on selling. And so I'm like, well, what would the best look like? And so what I've done, it's been really hard, is every single week on a Thursday, we have a masterclass for the group, which is from someone who's like crazy good. So last night we had a guy who's one of the judges of the Emmys, and he's worked with like major creative agencies for 20 odd years. Like he just dropped in, like one of my clients was Discovery. Last week we had someone who was like head of a whole region for Louis Vuitton. And prior to that was in like leading the luxe part of Airbnb. The week before that, we had someone who was the sales and marketing director for Hard Rock International. It's almost a $6 billion business. I've got like the sales trainer from Accenture. I've got someone who works at Salesforce. So all walks of life, but not like, hey, I'm a marketing bro who's made 6 figures. It's no people who are at the very top. It's really hard getting them. But when you get people like that, it's like, can't be denied the current level of quality. So I love it. Selfishly, Sabrina, because I get to sit there every Thursday with a notepad and learn myself. So I do masterclasses too. Like each month I'll do something which is like really tactical because I love that world and that seems to work well. So that's one side. The other side is that it is a community in the sense that my other thing is a membership. Now the membership is you learn a thing and then off you go. Whereas this is an actual community. So I've made hires. Rather than doing it all from my laptop in my mum's house, I'm like, I've hired 4 people to help, including like community heads and so on. And the focus is making sure that the experience is a good one for the members, not just the masterclasses, but that they're feeling heard. So what I did, you've asked, so I'm going to give you the detail. But what I did when I started this in the summer was spent a load of money and time paying like hosts of communities, like big communities, paying for their time, not picking their brains for free, like respecting them and going, here's £1,000. Can I have you for an hour and ask? And like, they've been so giving, speaking also to heads of like community leads as well, then speaking to a load of members, using my posts, not to become a guru, but to ask like market research and learn polls and everything. And what's interesting is that there's so many people who've stepped forward and shared things like, I just like to be heard. I don't want to be one member of many. And if I am, I better be heard. And I also want to feel like it's not fluff, you know? And so we learned so much. And I love that we did it this way. But what's crucial is that we are also mindful that you can be fairly the word is infobese rather than obese. Like you can just focus on learning all the time and never get any work done. So it's about like the brief for the masterclasses, for instance, is make it tactical so they can go and do it. And one of the big things that came out of this when we were building the Art of Sell was don't actually have too many things going on, because people think more value is high value, but it's not. Because if someone comes in, they're like, oh my God, there's like an event every day. There's all of these sections within the group platform. There's so much going on. I have to learn all of this stuff and it's overwhelmed. And now they're not doing any work. So we have a masterclass once a week. We have like 2, possibly 3 seminars in a month. That's it. And otherwise we're supporting. And the point is like, learn the stuff that's helpful. Now get on with your work. Because otherwise, so seriously, otherwise
you can't actually help your clients. Like, you did learning all the time. You might as well be at university.
And if you're learning all the time, exactly, if you're learning all the time, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
Like you should be, learning only what you need rather than, I call it positive procrastination, when you're doing things that feel relevant and it's evasion, or avoiding the work, Get on with your work, but come here and learn stuff that's useful, rather than a bloated amount of value that actually is mostly fluff. So I'm so proud of it. We've had the first month, 25 people per month are allowed in. The wait list is like hundreds already, which is lovely. I'm so excited for this. Thank you for letting me talk about it. But the idea is, every month we'll add more people, which is lovely. All of the, we're starting to book in more and more speakers, and everyone has been so giving and so kind. And I'd like to hope it's possibly because I've been a decent enough guy over the years that people are like, hey, it must be a half decent thing you're doing. So, giving people an understanding of sales so it doesn't give them the ick is really important to me. That's why we're here.
Who is it for? Like, who are the main people?
So obviously I'm going for low hanging fruit first. So like, it's the people who tend to engage in my stuff, which is consultants and coaches and solopreneur people who find me on LinkedIn. That's populated my waitlist. But there's no reason why it can't be helping anyone who has to transact in some way. Okay, so salespeople in whatever form. So a solopreneur has to be a salesperson. A corporate employed salesperson is selling too. But what's interesting is it's sales in the broader, full sense of it. So this is transactional selling, but it's also understanding communication deeper. It's understanding mindset and performance and how to hold yourself. And for someone who is internal, needing to sell an idea cross-department within a company, it's for them as well. I'm just going for the ones that are obvious right now, which are people in front of me. But I love that it hopefully will be much bigger than me. And it's not the Richard Moore show at all. It's about all things sales. But I just want people to have a good taste in their mouth. So we've got quite a big brief, which is to have people view selling differently.
I love it, and I think it's great. And I want to end on like some advice from you, because I feel like you've said so many great things, but I feel like there's such bad advice on LinkedIn at the moment. Like, there was so much of it, so much bullshit, and like that's why I've actually got a separate podcast called Sniffing at the Bullshit, where it's just me by myself ranting.
Oh, that's healthy.
I know, it actually does feel good. I had to change it halfway through and make it less ranty and actually put more science in it, because I felt like it was a bit angry. But it was just like, there was so much bullshit out there, and I would like to pick out the things that are really great. So I'd love to end on, basically, you spend time on LinkedIn, you see all the stuff that people are doing wrong, and you've filtered out your feed now, so it's good stuff. But where would you say people are going wrong? And like, for those who want to try and not make it big on LinkedIn, but actually make more money is the main thing. For those who are creating content on LinkedIn and want to make more money, what are the top things that they should be changing right now?
So I'm going to start the real top, which is in here, which is, the first thing to do, and I hope people have taken everything that's been said today in the right way. I have no beef with anyone unless they're full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is, I think, important.
Which is a lot.
Well, if it is, then it absolutely, we need to recognise that there's not everyone has noble intentions. And I think what's so crucial first is to say to ourselves, there's a lot of people just trying to make a buck of us. And so the job one is to say, even though it looks rosy, we need to recognize that for many posts that we're consuming, or even products that we're buying, courses or otherwise, we have to ask ourselves, are we buying, inverted commas, like consuming the hype or the actual service we need? When you ask yourself this, my daughters hate this because they're 9 and 12 and they're in that zone of like, advert, I want to buy the thing. I'm like, are you buying it's horrible in a way. I'm like, are you buying the hype or are you buying the actual thing? And it's like, when you're a grown up and you ask yourself that, you're like, I'm so falling for the hype.
Oh, I buy the hype loads of times.
Me too. I'm an easy sell with a lot of stuff. But when you at least are conscious of it, and like before you make a purchase, or before you make a purchase of consumption of content, say, is this hype and hyperbole? Because there's no such thing as an easy way. There aren't hacks, really. It's like, if someone's like got all the answers, and I have to say this, I know it feels like common sense, but for many, they fall into that trap. It's incredibly unlikely that someone's just suddenly found all these hit hacks. They're basically hyping you to get attention, to lie in their back pocket. So have that view first. It's not about being cynical, but it is about saying to yourself, there's probably a lot more hype and I need to be aware of that. But then the second thing is to recognize that if you want to transact and have client acquisition, and if you want to do it in a way that's fulfilling, not just for them, but for you, and is long-term, so you're not knocking on new doors every month. You've got people who are renewing and loving it. And like, I love it when people are pumping their fist in the air because you've allowed them to buy from you, like really loving it, and giving you referrals, you know, like I've seen you, or you refer, like someone mentioned you. If you want that, you have to earn it at the front end. So the big advice there is, aside from what we've already said, is make sure you're spending time with individuals, and you have to show that you give a shit. Like, and if you don't actually care about the outcomes for the prospect, you need to have a long, hard look at why you're doing it. Because it is consistent that the people who only want money tend to not have any money because they're so focused on themselves. Or if they do, they're not going to feel very fulfilled in life, no doubt, unless they're a bit unhinged. So unless you're that type, it's really important to remember, like, if you want proper impact, and eventually as you grow up, and I'm only in my mid-40s, but as you grow up, you're like, I want a legacy and I want to have done good and I want impact, then so do good. And it starts with giving a shit. And like, I genuinely care about how someone does. And I take it personally in the right way. If I've sold someone something and they're struggling, so we'll get on a call and so I'll help you. And, you know, give in that full sense to begin with, without an agenda. And if it turns into a sell, then great. But don't do bait and switch, because it's all just trying to do short-term games. So and it's, everything I'll say is a cliche because they're true, you know. And if we try and pave for the long term and be a good guy, you tend to find there's dividends further down. So it starts with not buying the hype. It secondly means you're going one-to-one and interacting. And, you know, every day there's certain things you should say to yourself. One is, where's my next deal coming from? There's a stunning number of people who don't even ask themselves that once a month. They ask themselves that when they suddenly need money. And they're like, oh, I wonder how last night's post I did. And I'm like, it doesn't cross my mind. My first thing crossed my mind is, where's the next deal coming from? And it's not toxic, and it's not, you know, being mercenary. It's important because I'm wearing a business hat and my business needs more customers. So because the number one priority, the number one reason for any business is to get a sale. That's crucial. So that crucial question is like, where's my next deal coming from? And the second one is, what conversations am I starting today? Not, can I go viral? Not, oh, how did my post do? Not, oh, I need to tick the box of all these comments and things. All very useful, but they're peripheral things to, am I having meaningful interactions with people each day? So here are your KPIs. If you start a day with, I ask myself, where's my next deal coming from? And then I have 3 to 5 meaningful interactions each day, and I post something that speaks to the symptoms of a problem to the right people in the right way, that shows I get them and I see them and aware of what they're going through, that's kind of job done for the day. And then the final thing, this is kind of a bit more salesy, but this is really, really healthy, I find, which is related to where's my next deal coming from, is every day I ask myself, have I scheduled another call today? Just one. Have I scheduled a call today? Now, the call might be in the form of, you know, just a catch up or a connection. And it comes actually from a managing director I worked with a long time ago in the city. And I remember he asked me, who are you having coffee with this week, Richard?
I like that.
I'm like, I don't know. I suppose I'm sitting by myself again. No one wants to have coffee. He's like, well, you should have a coffee with someone new every week. And I remember he said, some of them will be, God, they'll be so dull. And some of them will be like, oh, thank God it's only coffee and not dinner. But he said, but then some will be like, do you know what? I need to introduce you to someone or something like that. And it was so powerful. This was probably 15 years ago. And it blossomed. And now I do it every single week. You know, you're my coffee today, basically. And it's like, it might be that it's someone who could open doors. It could be a collaboration. I had an amazing guy I spoke to last night who's a big a big advisor, and he's working with like two heavyweights. And it was just such a powerful interaction. He sent me his deck, I sent me mine, and it's so powerful. So that's just good for the soul. But also, you might be wanting to have a call where it's someone where you might help them out, and it could turn into a deal. So if I book one call, it might not be for today, it could be for next Tuesday. But if every day I end the day with good intentions in the form of not buying hype, I add new people, I have depth in conversation, I post something valuable and put it out there because I have time to do one post a day easily. I interact a bit and contribute to the conversation, but then I book a call. I'm golden, and that's it, because that brings rewards. And the problem is, and I said what I was trying to make a point of earlier, you have to be cool with getting off that merry-go-round of, but what about my likes? Oh my God, I don't think I'm doing well because my post didn't do well. Post doing well means you get people saying, as they did, you described earlier, they send you a message saying like, that post was brilliant, that really resonated with me. And I did that with you 8 months ago. I felt compelled to write you a DM and say, it wasn't like a sell. I wasn't asking for business. It was just I just want to say, I loved what you said. That was brilliant. And I think it's just so powerful to have meaningful interactions, because ultimately everything reduces down to having to do that if we were going to end up with a deal. That's what a day looks like. And if you're spending 12 hours a day grinding, for instance, LinkedIn, like, what are you doing with your time? It is superfluous fluff, but it's one of the hardest things to detach yourself from that, because it feels like it's the right thing to do, because that's what the mainstream does, because it's easy to do that, because it can look like success. But it's the biggest myth in content marketing, that being popular or looking popular means you're successful. It's so crucial. And it plays ultimately, if you, again, reduce it down to behavioral science, it plays on the fact that as a human animal, we're impressed with status. That's all it comes down to.
I'm so glad you said all that. Just, do you know what I felt like recently? I felt like LinkedIn is feeling so much more like high school. And I was thinking back to high school, even any high school movies in America, and I'm like, how often are the most popular kids actually the most successful kids in life? They're actually not. That's what you start to realise.
Well, they have their time.
They have their time, but that's the thing, and it's short-lived. But actually, it's the ones in the shadows that go on to have the happiest, most fulfilled lifestyle. They're the ones that are also deeply happy inside. Often the ones on the outside that have all this pretty popular stuff, they're actually deeply unsatisfied. Well,
the people listening to this who search within themselves will know deep down if that is them, or even if it's partly them. And it's a farce, and ultimately it will bite you. And it's some interesting people I've met who started there, and they eventually get to this point where they're like, I'm just not happy. And they're even making money, and they're like, I just don't feel like I'm doing anything. Like, I see this person, they're doing stuff for charity. I see this person and they're making an impact in the world. And like, I'm just making money off other people's frustrations or fears through hype, and it's not really fulfilling. And ultimately, we've got to, if we can map to, this is like, I'm going to sound like some kind of granddad now. If we can map to a very, very satisfied 90-year-old version of ourselves, thinking like, it's great to say like, I lived life and I did all these great, exciting things. Sure, that'd be nice too. But if I am 90 and I'm like, I genuinely feel satisfied that I did something of impact rather than took from people through manipulative ways, I feel brilliant. So imagine like what would map to that. And sometimes, this is kind of my mic drop, sometimes you have to suck up that it's going to take you not a few weeks, but years of being in the shadows. The silent, dark years are the ones that actually get you those end results. Anyone with any measure of success, like really impressive success, had to go through the dark stuff. My dark years was a decade of cold calling. It was horrible at times, but and even when I left and started my business, it's the dark years of like just 6 meaningful conversations today, or I had 3 today, but that one person bought for like $600 for a bloody month of consulting, but it was just something more, and I'm doing good. And it's not instant success and fame. And actually, doing it the right way is the only route. And everyone knows that that's the truth. When you learn that it's just actually not the right way to try and cut corners, you eventually it's not resignation. Actually, you eventually realize that the right way is just got to be done the right way.
Oh, I love that, and I think that's the perfect note to end on, because it's like it's no bullshit, and it's like, you know, you got to do things right. And thank you so much for everything today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you. I love your energy, and I love this. Thank you so much. It's brilliant.